The worn, clapboard siding of the Mitchell house stood silent under the pale glow of a crescent moon. A late spring breeze carried the faint scent of lilacs through the quiet cul-de-sac, whispering secrets through open windows. Inside, the housewife, Anna Mitchell, lay sprawled on the plush carpeting of her master bedroom, one hand reaching, as if in desperation, for something just beyond her grasp. A single, flickering lamp cast long shadows against the walls, distorting the rows of family photos that lined the dresser. In each photograph, Anna smiled, perfectly composed, motherly devoted. But those smiles concealed a vulnerability she had never revealed to anyone. Not to her husband, Mark, who worked late nights at the law firm and still believed she needed a sitter for their neighbor's boy. Not to her friends at the weekly bridge group, who gossiped harmlessly about recipes and garden tips. And certainly not to Ethan Brooks, the young man whose presence had set her world on an irreversible course. Moments before, Anna had heard the softest click of the back door. Too late, she realized that someone else had let themselves in. Her pulse thundered through her ears as she scrambled for the lamp, but darkness swallowed her hand. She tried to rise, but pain exploded across her side. A thin, crimson ribbon bloomed against the white lace of her blouse. Panic surged. Her breaths came in shallow, ragged gasps. Footsteps, light, painfully deliberate, approached. Anna twisted her head and glimpsed a silhouette at the threshold. The figure paused, as though admiring the scene. Anna's vision blurred with tears, half in agony, half in shock. Who? She couldn't summon the words. The intruder raised an arm. For a heartbeat, Anna thought she recognized the sleeve of a blue varsity jacket, Ethan's jacket. Her mind recoiled, struggling to catch up with the impossible. Ethan Brooks, the sweet-faced neighbor's son, the boy she had once watched toddle across the lawn, the same boy who had grown into a young man with storm-tossed hair and haunted eyes. Could he be here now? Their eyes met for an instant. Anna's wide with terror, Ethan's inscrutable in the dim light, before the lamp shattered against the wall. Darkness claimed the room, and Anna cried out once more. Then everything went still, save the gentle rustle of lilac blossoms drifting through the open window. Outside, the moon slipped behind a bank of clouds. The cul-de-sac returned to its solitude, unaware that the night had borne witness to an unthinkable betrayal, and a murder that would unravel the bonds of every family on Hawthorne Lane. Morning light filtered through the sheer curtains of the Mitchell household, illuminating the tidy rows of hydrangeas in the front garden. The air was still cool, promising another warm spring day in Willow Grove, a subdivision where families had lived for generations, where crime meant the occasional missing cat, and where everyone knew your name before you even moved in. Anna Mitchell descended the staircase in a pale blue robe, her hair loosely pinned back with a pearl clip. Though she appeared the picture of domestic tranquility, fresh coffee brewing, breakfast plates set on the oak table, there was something in her posture that betrayed unease. She paused at the bottom step, resting a hand against the banister, as if bracing herself. At the breakfast nook, her husband Mark sidestepped the morning newspaper to pour her a cup of coffee. He was tall and lean, his dark hair flecked with early streaks of gray, and his suit jacket lay draped over the back of his chair. He glanced up from his plate of scrambled eggs and offered her a warm smile. "Good morning," he said. His voice was practiced kindness, the tone of a man accustomed to smoothing over minor domestic disturbances with a few gentle words. "Early meeting today?" She nodded, taking the steaming mug. "Yes, firm wants that contract wrapped up by Friday. I'll be late." She tried to sound casual. "Would you pick up Lucy from Mrs. Brewer's after school?" Mark frowned slightly. "I thought you'd arranged that already." He folded the paper, placing it neatly to one side. "You've been awfully distracted lately." Anna forced a laugh. "Just busy with the charity gala next week. You know how it is." She sipped her coffee, running a hand over the smooth ceramic rim. Somehow, that small comfort steadied her. Mark studied her for a moment longer, then resumed eating. "All right," he said finally. "I'll make the call. Don't burn the midnight oil too often." She smiled brightly. "I won't. Thanks, love." After Mark left for work, Anna said about her morning routine with a practiced efficiency, unloading the dishwasher, folding laundry, watering the roses by the garage. She hummed softly to herself, conjuring an innocent facade for the neighbors who might peer through the kitchen window. Mother of two, devoted wife, pillar of the community. At precisely 11 o'clock, the jingle of the gate announced her first visitor. She wiped her hands on her robe and stepped onto the porch to greet Mrs. Collins, the elderly widow next door, who came bearing a basket of freshly baked scones. "Delicious," Anna said, closing the gate behind her neighbor. "Thank you, Gladys." Mrs. Collins beamed. "I made too many. Thought perhaps you and the girls would enjoy a treat." Anna offered her a cup of tea, and they sat on the wrought iron bench beneath the wisteria arbor. They exchanged the usual pleasantries. Talk of the garden club meeting, the upcoming PDA bake sale, rumors of a stray dog scene near Maple Lane. Despite her efforts, Anna's laughter felt forced, and every so often she glanced at the street, scanning for a familiar figure who never arrived. By midday, the front door opened again, this time to a tall, wiry teenager with storm-tossed hair and intense gray eyes. Ethan Brooks stood awkwardly on the threshold, holding a stack of books. "Mrs. Mitchell," he mumbled. I dropped off the literature review papers you asked for." Anna's heart clenched at the sight of him. She smiled warmly and invited him in, all trace of tension slipping into a practiced hostess's poise. "Thank you, Ethan. Come in, dear." He stepped inside, brushing past her awkwardly as he set his books on the coffee table. His eyes flicked over her more quickly than any typical delivery boy's, lingering a moment too long on the swell of her blouse. "You're studying Renaissance prose, right?" she asked, pouring him a glass of lemonade. He nodded, voice low. "Yeah, I wanted to make sure you had first-hand sources before my exam next week." Anna raised an eyebrow. "You're welcome to stay and review them here, if you like." Ethan hesitated, then shrugged. "I'll probably just go home." He paused, looking toward the staircase. "Is Lucy here?" "No," Anna answered. "She's at dance practice." She offered the lemonade again. "But sit if you need to." He accepted the drink, knocked twice against the glass out of nervous habit, then lifted it to his lips. The lemonade trembled. She noticed the way his Adam's apple bobbed with tension. She gestured to the sofa. As he settled, Anna busied herself retrieving a small bowl of cookies. They sat on opposite ends of the living room, the afternoon sun casting slanted stripes across the rug. For a moment, silence stretched between them, punctuated only by the distant hum of a lawnmower. Ethan cleared his throat. Could you help me understand this passage?" Anna tilted her head, then stepped over to kneel beside him on the carpet. As she explained the finer points of Petrarchan imagery, she felt the warmth of his gaze on her neck, the brush of his knee against her own. She spoke in calm, measured tones, but inside, her pulse began to race. Their heads bent over the open book, the world beyond the Mitchell household fading into insignificance. Neither noticed the stillness settling over Willow Grove, that rare moment when even the birds hushed their songs and the suburban clockwork paused, as though holding its breath for something irreversible about to begin. Anna's days slipped into a comfortable routine that masked the brewing storm beneath her calm exterior. Each afternoon, she found herself anticipating Ethan's visits with a mixture of excitement and dread, longing and guilt. The tutor-student pretext allowed them to spend stolen hours together, poring over dusty tomes in the sunlit study, sharing herbal tea on the back porch, exchanging shy smiles that held the promise of something deeper. One warm Wednesday evening, as the sky blushed pink with sunset, Anna returned home earlier than usual. Mark had been delayed at the office, and Lucy was at dance class, giving Anna the freedom she secretly craved. She found Ethan waiting on the front step, leaning against the frame as though claiming it as his own threshold. "Hi," he said, voice low. In his hand, he held a single white camellia, its petals unblemished. "I saw these in your garden and thought, maybe you'd like one." Her breath caught. She hadn't confessed her fondness for camellias to anyone. She glanced back inside. "Come in," she whispered. "You shouldn't be here long." He followed her through the living room into the garden, where the hydrangeas and lilacs tangled in riotous bloom. The air smelled of earth and blossoms, and something more intoxicating, something only the two of them could sense. Ethan brushed a lock of hair behind her ear and laid the camellia at the base of her garden bench. "It's beautiful," she said softly, bending to pick it up. Their hands touched briefly, and a spark shot through her like an electric current. She bit her lip, startled. Ethan stood too close, his shoulder pressed against hers. His gaze was earnest, the great depths filled with unspoken yearning. "Anna, he swallowed. "These sessions with you, they mean more than just help with my papers." She closed her eyes and leaned into him, the afternoon sun warming her face. "I know," she admitted, though she wasn't sure if she meant his feelings or her own. Her pulse pounded as she felt him exhale, a subtle invitation. A distant car door slammed, and Anna startled, pulling back. "Your mom will wonder where you are," she hissed. He nodded, stepping away. "I'll go." He hesitated at the gate, hand on the latch, then turned. "I can't stop thinking about you, Anna. I promise I'll be careful." Her throat tightened. "Please be safe," she whispered, voice trembling. As he disappeared down the driveway, Anna sank onto the bench, the camellia cradled in her lap like a fragile heart. That night, she lay awake beside Mark, his steady breathing a balm and a burden all at once. She traced the outline of the camellia on her bedside table, fingers brushing the petals in the dark. Guilt coiled around her every thought, yet beneath it simmered a desire she could no longer deny. The next day at the grocery store, she bumped into Mrs. Brewer, who eyed her curiously. "You look pale, dear," she said, placing a hand on Anna's arm. "Everything all right at home?" Anna forced a smile. "Just tired," she lied. "Between work and Lucy's recital, I haven't slept much." Later in the study, Anna found Ethan's books waiting, neatly stacked by the window. She opened the top volume, the margins filled with his cramped handwriting, annotations that revealed a mind racing with passion. In the margin beside a sonnet about unrequited love, he'd scrawled, "My heart aches for you." Anna's fingertips traced the words, her breath catching. The domestic world she'd built. Lawyer husband, well-behaved daughter, picture-perfect life, suddenly felt like a cage. Outside, the wind stirred the blinds, casting striped shadows across the floor. Anna rose, clutching the book to her chest, and stepped out into the afternoon sun, her reflection fractured in the glass of the front door. In that fractured image, she saw the woman she had been, dutiful, content, safe, and beside her, the woman she was becoming, restless, alive, dangerously drawn to a young man she had once cared for like a friend. The boundary between propriety and passion had begun to blur, and Anna knew with a cold certainty that nothing on Hawthorne Lane would ever be the same. The next morning, the hush of Willow Grove was broken by the rattling of whispers. By the time Anna stepped into Mrs. Brewer's kitchen for her weekly coffee exchange, she could already hear fractured rumors drifting through the open window. "I heard she's meeting that boy every day," Mrs. Brewer whispered as she poured steaming coffee into 2 dainty cups. "Ethan Brooks, such a polite young man, but this is improper." Anna forced a polite nod, but her heart pounded. She took the cup, lifted the delicate handle, and blew across the surface to cool the brew. "Really," she said lightly, leaning forward. "How often do you see them together?" Mrs. Brewer lowered her voice, pressing a flour-dusted hand to her lips. "I've seen your gates open at odd hours, dear. And that boy, he lingers longer than necessary." People are talking. Across the kitchen, the old hardwood floorboards creaked as Mrs. Collins stepped in, carrying a plate of muffins. She frowned at Anna. "Dearest, I hope there's nothing scandalous happening here. You know how quickly reputations are ruined in this town." Their words pressed against Anna's chest like a vice. She smiled, setting her coffee down. "I appreciate your concern," she said, voice steady, "but Ethan is simply helping me with my essay on Renaissance poetry." She lifted a muffin, taking a courteous bite. "Isn't that right, Gladys?" Mrs. Collins pursed her lips, but nodded, conceding to Anna's calm authority. Yet as Anna left the house, the weight of their stares lingered behind her, cold as their gossip. At home, She found a note slipped under the front door. "Anna, come to the garden tonight. I need to talk." It was unsigned, written in precise, slanted script. Her pulse skipped. She scanned the street. Empty. Someone was watching. That afternoon, Mark arrived home early, his brow furrowed. He dropped his briefcase by the door and set down a manila folder. "I found this in your car," he said, sliding the papers across the kitchen island. Anna's name was scrawled across a hospital lab report. He tapped it. "This says you had blood work taken last week." "What for?" Anna's heart thundered. She recalled the fleeting visit to the clinic. Mark had been called away on an emergency trial, and she had gone under the pretext of a routine checkup. But the report was vague. CBC and toxicology screen pending. She closed her eyes, steadying her voice. "I had some dizziness, nothing serious. I'll discuss it with the doctor after the gala." Mark's eyes searched hers, doubt flickering across his features. "You could have told me," he said quietly. "I thought we shared everything." She reached out, placing a hand on his arm. "We do," she said, though the lie tasted bitter. "I didn't want to worry you." He nodded slowly, but the tension in his jaw remained. That evening, beneath a copper sky, Anna slipped out to the garden. The porch light was dimmed, the lawn chairs turned outward as if awaiting an unseen guest. She waited, clutching the unsigned note, her breath misting in the cool air. Moments later, a figure emerged from the shadows. Detective Laura Chun from the Willow Grove Police Department. Her trench coat collar was turned up against the breeze, and her dark eyes were unreadable. "Mrs. Mitchell," she began, voice low. "May I come in?" Anna's stomach lurched. "Of course," she whispered, stepping aside. Detective Chun followed her into the house and up to the study, where the blinds were already drawn. The detective pulled out a notepad. "Your neighbor, Mrs. Brewer, reported some late-night visitors and a noise disturbance last Friday," Chun said, flipping through pages of notes. "And your husband mentioned he found that lab report. We're investigating a potential break-in, or worse." Anna's chest constricted. "Is someone hurt?" she asked, lips trembling. Chun studied her. "Your name came up," she said carefully. "You're the neighborhood's most prominent figure. If someone staged a scene here..." "What scene?" Anna interrupted, panic rising. The detective held up a hand. "We don't know yet, but I need to ask. Have you noticed anything unusual? Missing items? Strange messages?" Anna thought of the creased note, of Ethan's tense glances, of her own pounding guilt. She shook her head. "No, except for that note." She retrieved it from her pocket and handed it over. Chun read it, expression unreadable. "We'll analyze the handwriting," she said. "I need your contact information, and if you remember anything, no matter how insignificant, call me immediately." As the detective left, Anna closed the front door and leaned against it, trembling. The horror she tried to keep hidden was surfacing. Someone knew something, someone suspected. The fragile boundaries of her secret world were crumbling, and with every whispered rumor and pointed glance, Anna realized how perilously close she stood to losing everything. Overhead, a lone star flickered above Willow Grove, an indifferent witness to the unraveling of lives beneath its silent gaze. Anna spent the next morning in a haze of fear and anticipation. Every creak of floorboard, every call of a distant bird, sounded to her like the approach of Detective Chun or the disapproving whisper of the neighborhood. She busied herself with trivial chores, polishing silverware, ironing Mark's shirts. But her thoughts always drifted back to the note, to Ethan's haunted eyes, and to the possibility that someone was watching. That afternoon, determined to regain control, she sent a quick text to Ethan. "Meet me at the studio at 6. No one else." She revisited the note's precise handwriting and wondered if it might match her own. She'd been so careless, slipping from one illicit encounter to the next. But the thought of Mark discovering the affair chilled her more than any police inquiry. At 6, Anna slipped out the back door, carrying a small lantern. The community art studio sat at the far end of Hawthorne Lane, its brick facade softened by ivy and the murmur of students inside. She paused at the doorway, inhaling the familiar scent of turpentine and sun-warmed canvas, then slipped through the side entrance. Ethan was already there, illuminated by the fading light streaming through the large windows. He stood before an easel, brush in hand, working on a half-finished landscape. When he sensed her presence, he turned, relief and desire mingling in his gaze. "Anna," he breathed, setting down the brush. "You got my message?" She nodded, stepping forward. "We need privacy," she whispered. "No more mistakes." He drew her into the painting area, where the smell of paint and the hush of other artists made them feel cocooned. "I've been thinking," he said, voice low, "about us." Anna's pulse hammered. "If we're going to do this," she said steadily, "we have to be cautious. I can't risk my family or your future." Ethan's face hardened with both passion and fear. "I know," he said, "but I can't stay away. Every moment without you, it kills me." She closed her eyes, swallowing. "Then we'll continue meeting here, away from prying eyes." She laid a finger on the edge of the canvas, where a lone tree stood against a stormy sky. "Our secret." He stepped closer, so close that she could feel the heat of his body. His hand found hers, fingers interlacing. She turned toward him, but at that moment, the studio door creaked open. Both froze. A tall figure entered. Garrett Lewis, Anna's Monday night pottery instructor, carrying a stack of clay slabs. He halted, brow furrowed, as he took in the tense tableau. Anna's pale face, Ethan's guarded stance, the intimate closeness between them. "Oh," Garrett said softly. "I didn't realize the studio was still open." He set the slabs down and approached. "Anna, can you help me with glazing?" His tone was polite but probing, as if searching for hidden tensions. Anna disentangled her hand from Ethan's and stepped back. "Of course," she said, voice steady. She forced a polite smile to Garrett as she moved toward the pottery wheel in the corner. Ethan lingered for a moment, eyes like dark storms, then slipped behind a row of drying sculptures to hide. As Anna guided Garrett through the wheel's motions, she feigned calm. Every instruction was a shield, every careful turn of clay a distraction from the tumult within. Garrett chatted about the upcoming exhibit, the new glazes arriving next week. Small talk that never touched the undercurrent of what he'd just seen. After what felt like an eternity, Garrett excused himself to fetch more water. The moment he left, Anna slipped away, heading straight for the corner where Ethan crouched behind a half-formed vase. He stood as she approached. "They saw us," he whispered, voice strained. "Garrett saw us." Anna clenched her jaw. He didn't say anything. "But we can't take chances. From now on, only phone calls and only voice, no text that could be traced." Ethan ran a hand through his hair. "What about the police? Are they still looking into everything?" She shook her head. Detective Chen's inquiries were vague. "She's fishing for something, maybe connected to the break-in. I haven't told Mark the truth about why we were meeting. He thinks I'm working on the gala invitations." Ethan's shoulders slumped. "I can't lose you, Anna." "I won't let that happen," she promised, placing a trembling hand on his arm. "But we have to be smarter. We meet by the willow tree at dawn, before anyone's awake." "Understand." He nodded, eyes shining with both love and fear. Dawn. As they slipped out of the studio, separately, Anna through the side door, Ethan into the gathering twilight. Their hearts pounded in unison. Behind them, the art studio lights flickered, oblivious to the dangerous liaison it had just sheltered. Outside, the suburban night resumed its quiet vigil, unaware that love and betrayal were weaving their threads ever tighter, and that the next secret meeting might seal all their fates. The night air carried a brittle chill as Anna slipped from her bed at 3:45 a.m., heart pounding in her chest like a frantic drum. She moved through the darkened hall of the Mitchell home with practiced stealth, each footfall muffled by her slippers, careful not to wake Mark or Lucy. In her hand, she clutched a small flashlight and her phone, its screen dimmed to avoid any giveaway glow. Outside, the cul-de-sac was deserted. Streetlights cast long pools of yellowish light across the pavement, and the silver sliver of the moon was obscured by fast-moving clouds. Anna's breath puffed in little vapors as she walked toward the willow tree at the far edge of her property, their secret rendezvous point. Under the drooping boughs, Ethan stood waiting. His breath caught in his throat when he saw her. Relief and longing mingled in his gray eyes. As she approached, he stepped forward, brushing a stray lock of hair from her face. "We need," he began, but Anna held up a finger. "Hush," she whispered. "Look out." He scanned the darkness beyond the willow, tension snapping through him. Anna's mind raced. She'd arranged this meeting to tell him it was over. Too dangerous, too close to discovery. Yet now, under the willow's silent arches, she found her resolve faltering. His presence carved a hollow ache in her chest. A sudden rustle in the neighbor's yard froze them both. Ethan tensed, lips parting. Anna's hand flew to her mouth. The sound came again, footsteps on gravel, and then a single, low whistle cut through the night. Anna swallowed hard. "Someone's out there," she breathed. They crouched low behind the thick trunk of the willow. Through a gap in the branches, Anna saw a figure emerge onto her lawn. Slender, tall, wearing a dark hoodie, the silhouette paused by the garden bench where the camellia once lay. Ethan slid his hand into Anna's, gripping her fingers. "We should go now." She nodded, voice barely a whisper. "On three. 1, 2, 3. They darted from behind the tree, aiming for the side gate. But a sudden flash lit the yard like a gunshot. Anna screamed as light bloomed in her eyes. And in that moment, she felt a searing pain in her side. The world spun. She stumbled, fingers slipping from Ethan's grasp. Ethan cried out, bending beside her as she collapsed against the damp grass. She tried to drag herself away, but weakness swallowed her limbs. Panic surged in her chest as footsteps thundered closer. "Anna." Ethan's voice cracked. He pressed his hand to her wound, blood seeping between his fingers. The flashlight clattered to the ground, casting their twisted shadows against the hedge. "Ethan," she gasped, vision blurring. "Run." Tears welled in Ethan's eyes, but he shook his head. "No, I'm not leaving you." The hoodie figure stood above them now, face hidden. A soft chuckle echoed in the chilly air. "Stay down, Anna," the voice hissed. "And you, boy, stay out of my business." Ethan rose, trembling, his knuckles white around Anna's hand. "Who are you? What do you want?" The intruder knelt, tilting Anna's chin upward so moonlight revealed her pale face. "You and this woman, you crossed the line," he whispered to Ethan. His tone was both sorrowful and cruel. "You should have left well enough alone." Anna's vision twitched. Pain lanced through her body. She struggled to speak. But Ethan couldn't move. He shook his head furiously. The intruder's free hand dipped into his jacket pocket, and Anna's heart stopped. He held a slender object in his palm. A scalpel, perhaps? A letter opener? She couldn't tell in the dim light, but she recognized the gesture from her own nightmares. The final blow. Ethan sprang forward, yanking the intruder's arm. It was enough distraction. The attacker hissed in surprise and swung the blade. Ethan lurched backward, slamming into the trunk. The blade missed Anna, but slashed across Ethan's forearm in a white-hot sting. He cried out, dropping Anna's hand to clutch his arm. Disoriented, Anna felt the world go dark as the intruder twisted away and vanished into the night, leaving both of them bleeding on the damp grass. Ethan pressed his bloody arm to his chest. He looked down at her, horror in his eyes. "Anna, stay with me," he pleaded, voice breaking. "Stay alive." She tried to smile, tears slipping down her cheeks. I love you," she whispered, breath rattling. Ethan's tears fell freely. "I love you too." Somewhere close, a car door slammed. Someone had heard the commotion. Footsteps pounded across lawns. A distant shout, "Help! Call 911." Ethan fumbled for his phone, hands shaking with shock and fear. He dialed, voice urgent. "Please, my neighbor's bleeding. It's bad. Please hurry." Anna's hand went limp in his. Her eyelids fluttered as pain and blood loss stole her strength. The last thing she saw was Ethan's anguished face silhouetted against the gathering lights of approaching cars. And then silence. The willow stood witness once more, its weeping branches drooping over the fallen lovers, guarding their final breaths in the cold embrace of midnight. The flashing red and blue of the police cruisers splashed over the Mitchell lawn, cutting through the pre-dawn fog like fractured stained glass. Neighbors gathered at a cautious distance, murmuring in shocked whispers as uniformed officers and paramedics hurried across the wet grass toward the willow tree. Detective Laura Chun arrived moments later, her trench coat collar upturned against the damp chill. She knelt beside Ethan, who was cradling Anna's motionless form in his arms, his face streaked with blood and tears. Paramedics worked quickly, checking vitals and applying pressure to his wounds. But it was clear from the tension in their shoulders that Anna's condition was dire. "Step back," Detective Chun ordered, gently guiding Ethan aside so the medical team could do their work. She pressed a hand to her radio. "This is Chun. Victim is female, mid-30s, multiple stab wounds. Possible life-threatening. ETA to hospital, immediate." Ethan watched, distraught, as Anna was lifted onto a stretcher and carried toward the ambulance. He tried to reach for her hand, but an officer held him back. "Son, you need to let them work," the officer said quietly. "You're injured too. We need to get you checked." Ethan glanced down at his bandaged arm, then at the disappearing ambulance lights. He hesitated, then nodded, allowing himself to be escorted to another squad car. Detective Chun stood alone beneath the willow, surveying the scene. Yellow crime scene tape snapped in the breeze, cordoning off the garden. A forensics team had arrived, their white coveralls ghostly in the dim light. Chun pulled on latex gloves and began methodically examining the area. The crushed grass where Anna fell, the smudged footprint by the garden bench, the glint of a small metallic object near the trunk. A forensic technician held up a folded scrap of paper. Chin recognized Ethan's hurried handwriting. "Meet me under the willow at dawn." Chin's lips compressed. "Keep that safe. It's evidence." A neighbor, Mr. Delgado from next door, approached tentatively. "Detective, I heard shouting. I saw a shadow running toward the back alley." He pointed down the street. "It was someone tall, I think wearing dark clothes." "Thank you," Chun said, noting down the description. "Stay by the tape if we have more questions." As daylight slowly brightened the sky, the detective and her team worked in tense silence. They photographed the scene, dusted for fingerprints on the garden bench and the lantern Anna carried, and carefully bagged the metallic object, a slender letter opener, engraved with a family crest. It would be sent to the lab for blood and fingerprint analysis. Detective Chun stepped back, pulling her coat tighter. Her breath fogged in the cool air as she considered the fractured lives at the heart of the crime. The victim, Anna Mitchell, was a well-known figure in Willow Grove. The suspect, still at large, had shown both familiarity and hatred. And a wounded teenager sat in the back of a squad car, his arm bleeding, eyes haunted by the memory of his mother's or his lover's final moments. Chun radioed dispatch. "We need all units canvassing the area for the metallic letter openers match. Check pawn shops, private collections. Send K9 to track scent from that footprint. And find out who owns that crest." As the sun rose over Hawthorne Lane, the peaceful facade of suburban life lay shattered. Behind every neatly trimmed hedge and picket fence, old loyalties frayed and new suspicions ripened like poison fruit. In the hours to come, Detective Chun would uncover secrets that many would kill to protect. And one of those secrets had already drawn blood. Detective Chun gathered her team in the small conference room at the Willow Grove station. Photographs of the crime scene and evidence laid out on the table captured the grim tableau. Anna's torn blouse, the letter opener stained with blood, Ethan's discarded lantern, the muddy footprint. Across from her, Officer Ramirez tapped his pen against a stack of neighborhood canvas reports. "All right," Chun began, voice steady. "We have 3 primary persons of interest. Mark Mitchell, husband, Ethan Brooks, the young man found at the scene, and Garrett Lewis, the pottery instructor who witnessed their closeness in the studio. Let's look at their potential motives. 1. Mark Mitchell. Opportunity. Works late nights, but often returned unexpectedly. Could slip into his own home unseen. Motive. Jealous rage upon discovering Anna's affair. The lab report Mark found suggests he was already suspicious of activities beyond mere tutoring. Witnesses confirm he seemed agitated in the days before the murder. Alibi claims he was in a late meeting at the firm until 2 a.m., but attendees recall him somewhat distracted and texting throughout. Cell tower records place his phone in the vicinity of the Mitchell home. 2. Ethan Brooks. Opportunity. Found beside Anna under the willow. Bled from a defensive cut on his forearm. Could have been both victim and suspect. Motive. Passionate love, possibly fear of abandonment if Anna ended the affair. Anger could have turned violent. His annotations in her Renaissance texts show an obsessive fixation. Alibi. He admits to arranging the dawn meeting, but insists he ran to find help after Anna was stabbed. Footprint dimensions match his shoe size. 3. Garrett Lewis. Opportunity. Teaches pottery on site at the studio. Saw Anna and Ethan together more than once and knows their secret meetups. His schedule passes through the Mitchell yard during early mornings on his way home. Motive. Unrequited love for Anna. He had previously courted her. Several students heard him complain about another man taking her attention. He possesses his own set of family-engraved letter openers, similar to the murder weapon's crest. Alibi. Claims he was home asleep at the time, but no one can confirm his whereabouts between midnight and 4 a.m. Detective Chun paused, observing the faces around her. Each suspect had both the access and emotional stakes to commit this crime. We need to focus on forensic results, the blood and fingerprint analysis on the letter opener, as well as surveillance and phone records. In particular, check Garrett's studio locker for matching crested knives. Re-interview Mark's meeting colleagues about his state of mind. And get Ethan's full statement once he's medically cleared. Officer Ramirez nodded. I'll also talk to neighbors again. Maybe someone saw footprints leading toward the back alley. Chun rose, determination in her eyes. We'll find the truth. One of these three, perhaps more, knows exactly what happened that night. And I intend to prove it. Outside, the morning sun warmed the station's red brick walls. Inside, hidden resentments and secret passions lay ready to be unearthed, like buried bones waiting for justice's careful hands. The investigation was just beginning. By midday, the Willow Grove Police Department's bullpen hummed with quiet energy. Detective Chun stood behind her desk, eyes fixed on a series of photographs pinned to the evidence board. The engraved letter opener, Anna's lab report, Ethan's blood-streaked notebook pages, and a printout of Garrett Lewis's phone records. Beside her, Officer Ramirez tapped a mug of now-cold coffee, waiting. Blood analysis confirms 2 DNA profiles on the letter opener, Chin announced. She pointed to the first profile, Anna's defensive blood from the last struggle. The second matches Garrett Lewis's DNA from the university's criminal justice database. She tapped the photograph of Garrett's grim, worried face. He had the means, and as we suspected, the motive. Ramirez frowned. Garrett's phone records also show a call to an unregistered burner phone at 3:02 a.m. that night, and GPS places him within 500 meters of the Mitchell yard. He tapped another printout. Meanwhile, Ethan's phone records reveal constant calls and texts between him and Anna. Voicemails lasting minutes. Deleted messages we recovered that speak of never leaving her and meeting at the Willow. Chin nodded. That paints a volatile picture. Anna torn between two loves. But it still doesn't prove Garrett carried out the stabbing. We need more. She reached for the lab report on the letter opener. I've sent this for fingerprint enhancement. If we find Garrett's prints exclusively, and none of his own alibi witnesses can place him firmly at home, his story falls apart. Ramirez flipped through the interview transcripts. I re-questioned Mrs. Brewer. She remembers seeing a tall figure in dark clothes slip into the alley just after 4 a.m. She thought it was Ethan at first, but Ethan didn't leave until after the struggle. The stride matches Garrett's gait. Long, deliberate. Chin added, and remember the hidden camera Garrett installed at the studio. He cracked under questioning and admitted it was pointed partially at the door. The footage shows him retrieving something from his car at 2:50 a.m., though the lens was too grainy to identify the object. He said it was extra clay slabs, but we found no slabs in his trunk during the search. Ramirez pointed to a torn envelope on the board. We also discovered this among Anna's personal effects after she was taken to the hospital. It was hidden in her desk drawer, addressed to GL in Anna's neat handwriting. Inside is a confession. Anna wrote that she intended to end things with Garrett once the gala was over, thanking him for his kindness but urging him to move on. She called it a debt of gratitude I cannot repay. Chen's eyes darkened. He must have read it, found it in her study, and realized his hopes were dashed. And with the crest on the letter opener matching his family's emblem, this becomes personal. She turned to the digital map on her screen, tracing the route from Garrett's pottery studio to the Mitchell driveway. Look at the timing. He disappears from his home at 2:45, heads to the studio, perhaps to check if Anna was meeting Ethan, then proceeds to the Mitchell house by moonlight. He finds Anna under the willow and strikes in jealous fury, thinking Ethan is the interloper but unable to find him. In his rage, he stabs Anna and wounds Ethan when he tries to intervene. Ramirez exhaled. Garrett's story about unrequited love sounds like obsession. I think he saw their closeness in the studio and felt betrayed by a student he admired and a neighbor who never truly returned his affection. Chun gathered the files. Prepare an arrest warrant. We'll charge him with attempted murder of Ethan Brooks and the murder of Anna Mitchell. Once we have his enhanced prints and the camellia pollen found on the blade, unique to Anna's garden, that will place the weapon at the scene and in his hands. Late afternoon, Mitchell home, hospital wing. Ethan sat by Anna's bedside, holding her pale hand. The soft beep of the vital signs monitor was a fragile reassurance. Her face was bruised and drained, but her breathing was steady. He whispered her favorite passages from Shakespeare, his voice wobbling. Detective Chun approached quietly. "Ethan," she said softly. He looked up, eyes red-rimmed. "I got your statement to the DA this afternoon," she continued. "Your testimony is crucial. Your description of the attacker's voice, that low, regretful tone, and a shot of the blade all match Garrett's confession about how the confrontation unfolded." Ethan's grip tightened. "Is he in custody?" Chun nodded. "He's under arrest. We have him in an interrogation room now. I want to give you a chance to hear him confess in person, if you wish, but only if you're ready." Ethan swallowed. "I want to know why he did it." Chun offered a gentle nod. "I'll take you there. But first, how is she?" "She'll fight," Ethan whispered. "She has to." Chun placed a hand on his shoulder. "She's strong. Rest now. We'll get justice." Interrogation room, Willow Grove PD. Garrett Lewis sat across from Detective Chun, eyes hollow and defiant. A cup of water sweat-beaded before him. Chun slid Anna's torn confession letter across the table. "You wrote this, Mr. Lewis," she said calmly. "You found it, realized she planned to end things with you, and in your rage, you armed yourself with your family letter opener. You followed Anna to the willow and stabbed her, believing Ethan was just a boy you could scare off. When Ethan intervened, you wounded him too." Garrett's shoulders slumped. He picked up the letter, voice quiet. "I loved her. All my life, she was the light in my darkness." He looked up, tears shining. "I thought if I protected her from that boy, she'd see I was the only one who cared." Chen's expression was unreadable. "You crossed the line, Garrett. You killed her." He closed his eyes, shoulders shaking. "I'm sorry." As evening fell over Willow Grove, the case that had fractured a community reached its turning point. In the sterile glow of the interrogation room, hidden revelations had exposed the raw truth. Jealousy and obsession, secret liaisons and tragic misunderstandings, all colliding beneath the weeping willow. And though justice would soon chart its course through the courts, the scars left on those involved, on Ethan, on Mark, on the fractured neighborhood, would take far longer to heal. The courthouse loomed over downtown Willow Grove, its neoclassical columns and stone facades promising solemnity and order. On the morning of the trial, reporters gathered behind velvet ropes, their cameras poised to capture every moment. Neighbors craned their necks from across the street. Gossip rippled through the town like wildfire. Inside, the air smelled of polished wood and nervous anticipation. Judge Harriet Lawson took her seat beneath the American flag, her gavel tapping once to call the courtroom to order. Garrett Lewis sat at the defendant's table, shoulders hunched, eyes downcast. Opposite him, the prosecution team arranged their notes, Detective Chun among them, her face steeled with determination. Ethan Brooks sat behind the Mitchell's space, Mark clutching his daughter Lucy's hand, both pale and solemn in the front row. Prosecutor Angela Kim rose first. "Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury," she began, voice clear. "This case is one of premeditated violence born of jealousy. The evidence will show that on the morning of April 27th, 2025, the defendant, motivated by unrequited love and rage, armed himself with a family-engraved letter opener, followed Mrs. Anna Mitchell to her home, and stabbed her repeatedly under the cover of darkness. When Ethan Brooks intervened, Mr. Lewis turned on him as well, leaving both victims gravely wounded. We will present forensic reports, eyewitness testimony, and the defendant's own words, proving beyond a reasonable doubt that he is guilty of first-degree murder and attempted murder." When defense attorney Robert Hale stood, his tone was measured. "Your Honor, members of the jury," he said, "we do not dispute the tragic events that occurred under that willow tree. But my client's state of mind was temporarily compromised by emotional distress and obsession, not a calculated intent to kill. Mr. Lewis acted in a moment of confusion and heartbreak, an awful lapse for which he accepts responsibility, but not a premeditated murder. We will show that Mr. Lewis believed he was protecting the woman he loved from harm, and that he had no desire to end her life. We ask you to consider the difference between a crime of passion and a crime of planning." Prosecutor Kim rose, her eyes sweeping the jury. This was no accident. This was betrayal, jealousy, and rage. Garrett Lewis chose to harm, and he did more than wound. He nearly took a life he claimed to cherish. Defense attorney Hale followed, voice somber. "We ask you to consider Garrett's love for Anna, his momentary lapse of reason, and the difference between malice and a broken heart. A crime of passion does not equate to first-degree murder." After hours of deliberation, the jury filed back in. Judge Lawson read the verdict. Guilty on all counts. First-degree murder of Anna Mitchell and attempted murder of Ethan Brooks. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Garrett slumped, tears streaking his face. Ethan, eyes red but steady, let out a long exhale. Mark and Lucy embraced, Lucy weeping softly into her father's shoulder. Detective Chun sat back, satisfaction and sadness mingling in her expression. As Garrett was led away in handcuffs, he turned toward the Mitchells, mouth opening in an inaudible apology. Ethan watched, conflicted grief shadowing his features, love and loss intertwined. Outside, the afternoon sun warmed the steps of the courthouse, indifferent to the lives forever altered within. In Willow Grove, the trial's conclusion marked not just the end of a legal battle, but the beginning of a long journey toward healing and forgiveness, for a community that would never forget the night the willow tree wept blood. The verdict had passed into history, but its echoes reverberated through every corner of Willow Grove. In the days following the trial, the Mitchell house stood shuttered, draped in the quiet sorrow of absence. Yellow crime scene tape had long since been removed, but neighbors still crossed the street with lowered eyes as though entering consecrated ground. Mark Mitchell, once the epitome of composure, found himself unraveling. He returned to the law firm only briefly, then requested leave, claiming burnout, though colleagues suspected grief. Late at night, he sat alone in the living room, haunted by memories. Anna's gentle laughter as she fluttered through the kitchen, her warm hand brushing the top of his. Lucy's room remained untouched, her ballet shoes still by the door, her drawings pinned to the wall. Mark's grief coiled around him like ivy. He spoke rarely, ate less often, and allowed himself only the smallest comforts: a scotch on ice, a worn photograph of Anna in happier times. Lucy, their 10-year-old daughter, clung to her father in a way that spoke of both desperation and loyalty. School felt impossible. Each classroom reverberated with hushed questions. "Where is your mother? Why wasn't she here?" Lucy answered simply, "She's not coming home," before burying her head in her backpack. Nights were worst. She woke screaming from nightmares of the willow tree, her small body shaking with tears. Mark tried to reassure her. "She's in a better place," he whispered, before his own tears betrayed him. Ethan Brooks, meanwhile, struggled in a different way. His body had healed, his forearm scarred but strong, but his heart bore a wound that no stitch could close. Anna's final words, "I love you," echoed in his mind. He spent hours in the art studio, painting under the willow tree motif, brushstrokes thick with regret. He kept vigil at her hospital bed until the very end. One last promise that Anna would not face death alone. When she finally slipped away, the world felt emptier. He dropped out of college to care for his father, who'd retreated into silence. Ethan's art sold quietly at local galleries, each canvas a quiet elegy to a love forbidden, a love that, in the end, could not save them. Garrett Lewis sat in a high-security cell, his world limited to a cot, a sink, and a small barred window. In a letter written by hand, so carefully that his penmanship seemed a final attempt at redemption, he pleaded for forgiveness. "I was blinded by devotion," he wrote. "I never wished to harm her. My failure cost 2 lives." But the judge had been clear. Remorse did not erase the blade's edge. Garrett would spend decades in prison, carrying with him the burden of what he had done. In Willow Grove, life moved on in the ways only small towns know. The local florist replaced the camellias at church with lilies for the memorial service. The PDA vowed to dedicate the spring fair in Anna's honor, raising funds for a scholarship in her name, an acknowledgement of her tireless charity work. Neighbors spoke less of Anna's affair or the trial, focusing instead on the tragedy's human cost. 2 families broken, a community forced to reckon with the darkness beneath its manicured lawns. Mark found a measure of peace in small acts. He volunteered at the local hospice, offering quiet companionship to those in their final days. For every elder he comforted, he felt a connection back to Anna's compassion. Lucy, slowly coaxed back into school with the help of a counselor, placed a single white camellia at her mother's gravesite every week. A ritual both painful and powerful, a daughter's unwavering devotion. Ethan, after a year of absence, returned to campus in the autumn. He carried Anna's locket, her handwriting etched on the back, for the moments we shared. He wore it to every class, every gallery showing, and when inspiration faltered, he opened it and whispered her name. Through his grief-stricken art, he began to teach others about love's complexity, how it can bring both beauty and devastation, how forgiveness may light the path toward healing. 5 years later, the willow tree still bowed over the Mitchell lawn, its branches long and silvered with age. The Mitchell house had changed hands. A young couple with 2 children moved in, unaware of the tragedies once hidden beneath the tree's shade. A small plaque at the base of the trunk read simply, "In memory of Anna Mitchell, 1987 to 2025. May her kindness inspire us always."